Hello and welcome to BCS TV, presented by Armchair Jockeys. We're in York to preview 4 races that form part of the QIPCO British Champions Series. Racing first began on the Knavesmire back in 1731, and since then some of the greatest equine athletes of all time have strutted their stuff on this very turf. Most recently the likes of Brigadier Gerard, See the Stars and Deja, and the current king of the crop is about to do the same. The world's greatest racehorse, the unbeaten Frankel, attempts his first race beyond a mile in the Juddmonte International over 10 furlongs. Another horse never to have tasted defeat, albeit only after 4 starts, is the young speedster Pearl Secret. We'll hear about his Nunthorpe chances from trainer David Barron. John Ox sends his star stayer Sadler's Rock over from Ireland, hoping to land his second win of the season in the long distance division in the Lonsdale Cup. And after a series of excellent efforts in defeat, can Scirocco Star finally enjoy her moment of the sun in the Yorkshire Oaks? Well, I've been joined by Lydia Hislop and Steve Mellish, the old team back together again, eh?
It's good to see you. Looking taller and younger as well.
Very much so. Bringing the age down again, the average age, back down to a respectable level.
Reassessing your birthday every year.
You missed me, didn't you?
I did.
Look at Steve's face, he's so excited to have me back.
I had only just noticed, Rish, for a second. But it's a thrill.
More importantly, we're excited about the return to action of Frankel in the Juddmonte International. It's the first time we'll be seeing him over 10 furlongs. Before we hear from Lydia and Steve, let's find out what Teddy Grimthorpe, the racing manager to Prince Khaled Abdullah, makes of it all.
Were you excited about the challenge of stepping up to 10 furlongs?
Absolutely, for a lot of good reasons. Obviously, this is the 22nd year that Prince Khaled sponsored the race. It's been his flagship race for all that time, and to bring his flagship horse to that race is really a dream come true. Now he has matured both mentally and physically, and he's settled. He's with Tom. They've built up a really good relationship now, which is on sort of equal footing, you know, mutual respect. So I think when Tom says go, Frankel now is ready to step up to that.
In a perfect world, wouldn't be ridden any differently just because he's stepping up in distance?
I don't think so, mainly for two reasons, I would say. One is he's got this tremendous cruising speed, so if you stifle that, then you're stifling part of the best part of him, really, and his stride takes him to where he gets in the race, and so therefore there's no point in anchoring him or indeed really sort of blasting him off. It just let him in and be in his own natural rhythm.
Are you pretty confident, you'd say?
Yeah, I think now we're at a stage when everyone wants it and everyone's looking forward to it now, and I think, as we said before, Frankel has told Henry and now Henry's told us, and he's ready to make that step up, definitely.
If you were the racing manager of the opposition, what would you do to go, what would your tactics be?
Withdraw at the start.
Well, this is the moment that racing fans around the world have been waiting for. They've been talking about Frankel being brilliant over a mile. That to prove his greatness, he had to prove himself over a different distance, and here's the opportunity.
Yeah, whatever happens, he will still be a racing great. Yeah. You can't do what he did in the Queen Anne and not be a great. Yeah. Clearly he is the greatest miler I've ever seen, and I believe the greatest racehorse I've ever seen. And it depends on what your own personal standards are. Yeah. I like durability, and as he said in training as a 4-year-old, he's ticked that box. I like versatility, and so that's what he would be having to prove here. And I think now, having seen him how strong he is at the end of his races, the end of the Queen Anne, end of the Sussex when he barely got out of 3rd gear, but he still took ages and ages, the full length of the track, to pull up. I think he'll get 10 furlongs standing on his head. And Steve, conceivably, he could be better than we've seen over a mile at 10 furlongs.
Yeah, he's bred to be at least as good. It's hard to imagine he's going to be better because he's reached levels that, you know, horses don't normally reach. But I don't see any reason why he shouldn't be every bit as good, and who knows? It'll just be really exciting to see it. I mean, he's so much more the finished article. He's always had loads of ability, but he settles better now, and you know, he doesn't threaten to beat himself, which is what we were saying a year ago. You know, would he be a bit free? Would he be a bit keen? And I say the form since we last had the show I mean, the form of his win at Ascot, the Queen Anne, was so fantastic. It'd be a Frank White celebration, who we all remember being, 10, 11 lengths behind him, going and winning one of the major Group 1s in France last time. Incredible. I mean, whatever way you look at form, be it times or collateral form or whatever way you look at it, you cannot escape the conclusion that this is a truly great horse.
Is the step up in trip going to uproot their own tactics in some kind of way in the execution?
Okay, if it does, I'd be surprised, because I think it would be silly. I mean, you know, Henry Cecil's talked a lot about stayers and other horses in the past. Basically, they stay or they don't stay. That's always been his ethos, and he runs horses after he's had loads of front runners over the years. He doesn't believe, if you're running a horse over a trip, you've got to believe it will stay. I think they are very confident it will stay. I certainly believe that the tactics should be to go on 2 out, 2.5 out, just over 2 furlongs out, because what he's got, here's the thing that sets him apart to all other horses, is not a quick turn of foot. I mean, he does go quickly, very quickly, but he sustains it for a couple of furlongs. So it would be foolish to save that trump card until too late in a race. Equally, it would be stupid, in fact, in the St James's Palace, to play it too early, because then you're vulnerable coming back. But I think they've worked that out. York's, it's a long straight here, you've got a long time to get your tactics right. I think they would just try and go on as per normal over 2 furlongs out. If something then happens and he got beat, no one can blame the jockey.
So we have Frankel stepping up from a mile to 10 furlongs, and we've got Sir Nicholas Abbey stepping down from 12 furlongs to 10 furlongs. It's almost the perfect scenario for a clash for the first time between these two.
We've all been looking forward to Frankel stepping up to a 1.25 miles. It becomes irrelevant unless there's some good opposition. I mean, you are talking about, a multiple Group 1 horse winner taking him on, who even this year alone was very, very impressive winner of the Coronation Cup, and some would argue was unlucky next time in the King George. So this is a genuine, hard-knocking Group 1 horse taking him on.
But Lydia, how good is he over 10 furlongs? Because the last 2 times, or indeed the only 2 times he's raced over 10 furlongs, his form doesn't stack up.
That's definitely true. Like most things with racing, you can come up with other reasons in both cases. One was the first time he was coming back from almost a year off, and the second time it seemed to be a mistake in tactics. Joseph O'Brien gave St Nicholas Abbey too much to do. Yeah. However, at the same time, I do think the horse is better over 12 furlongs than 10 furlongs. So yes, I think he's going to be vulnerable.
And if you were Aidan O'Brien and Joseph O'Brien, what would you be doing? What would be the best option to come up with of how you ride St Nicholas Abbey to beat Frankel? Would you be aggressive? Would you be sitting on the tail of Bullet Train and kicking for home?
I think you'd want a really strong pace, first of all, because I think your strength is stamina, and at the moment the one unproven, whatever we might say, is Frankel's stamina. So you want a strong pace, and I would think they'd be thinking of committing somewhere. I would think. I can't see the point in sitting on a top-class miler and trying to do him for a turn of foot. I can't see the point of that.
Listen, Joseph, you're going to have to ride him prominently.
Well, Fahey has proven himself in Group 1 company this season, although he's come up against some mighty horses in Frankel and Nathaniel. He's owned by Godolphin, and their racing manager is Simon Crisford.
What did you make of his Goodwood run?
Well, I didn't think he ran as well as he did at Ascot and at Sandown, myself.
I agree.
And I put that down to the trip more than anything. I think we've established that 1.25 miles is a good trip for him.
He didn't travel like he normally does. I wonder if Goodwood itself completely suits him, the undulations of Goodwood.
No, I would agree with you there. And maybe the horse wasn't in as good form as he had been at when he ran in the Eclipse. I mean, the Coral Eclipse was a hard race for him. I mean, a really tough race. And it might have taken a little bit more out of him than we thought.
I thought he was below his best in the Sussex Stakes. I thought he was beaten at such an early stage that I'm not really inclined to blame the mile. Maybe it's 3 very quick Group 1 races. Maybe it was the track. Goodwood's quite tricky. He wouldn't want it to be fast ground, but I doubt it'll be so fast as to be prohibitive to him here at York. And I think he's a place player again.
I do have a theory. I think York will really suit him. I think the long straight, I know we're going back to handicap racing, but Thursky's not dissimilar. Not identical, it's not dissimilar the way a long straight. And I think for her, you saw it at Ascot, it takes a bit of a while to really hit top gear. And I think you've got plenty of time at York to, Frankie be riding him to find his stride early in the straight. And he's not like Ascot where you run out of ground, which is what I think happened there.
Well, I think it's quite simple. Frankel will win the Juddmonte International, and he'll win it very easily.
It's Frankel, and I think he's going to do it very, very comfortably. I think they're going to come here and want to show what he's got, and I think he's got plenty over 10 furlongs.
I think it's Frankel, and by a wide margin.
Now it's time for us to look ahead to the Darley Yorkshire Oaks, the big race for fillies and mares. And a horse who's hoping to finally win a big one is the admirably consistent Scirocco Star.
Absolutely. She's been second in, she should have been second in virtually everything. Had she not been quite so aggressively ridden in the Ribblesdale, I think she would have been second. She's been second in the Irish Oaks. She was second despite getting het up beforehand and running quite keenly in the Oaks itself. She's there all the time, no matter what the ground is. She runs her race. She's lovely.
Has she got any more improvement in her, Steve, do you think?
Hard to say. She's only a 3-year-old, so she could. And it's a question of whether she needs to. You know, if she runs her race again one day, one of these races will probably come away. It's not as if she's been thrashed in these races. She's a really good middle distance filly, impervious to the straight ground, goes on anything, which is really, encouraging. Whatever the weather brings, she should be okay.
Hugh Morrison's Coquette hasn't run since the Oaks at Epsom, where she was 6th. Is that a sign of concern for you, Steve?
She had a hard race, or she took the race it didn't come easy to her, the Oaks, and she's needed a rest basically, and I think he thinks it's a mixed blessing because the soft ground we've had subsequently she wouldn't have liked anyway, so she probably wouldn't have run because of the conditions. So she's fresh and well now, reportedly working well. She's very lightly raced. The last time we saw her in the Oaks, she was unfortunate. She would have been a lot closer. She got to run up the inside, and in many ways you could argue she's the dark horse of the race.
I think she's very unfortunate. She obviously hasn't taken that race well, but now she'll be fine. And the flip side to that is that she's fresh. She's a fresh horse, and other horses have been busy all season. I quite like her.
An interesting French challenger for the Yorkshire Oaks is Charetta. Now, she ran an excellent second to Meandra, and that form is now beginning to look good in light of Dane Dream's brilliant win in the King George.
Absolutely, and she ran really well in the Arc, of course, last year. She is behind Dane Dream. So she is a very good filly. Everyone thought it was a fluke at the time in the Arc. She proved with the run behind Meandra that it wasn't a fluke. And I think she's, I'm guessing, coming over slightly for the ground. I think she likes decent ground, and she has to be respected. She's run well in really good races.
Well, John Gosden's The Fugue is a horse who's shown enormous ability all season long and arguably put up her best performance when she won last time in the Nassau.
And she is a genuinely Group 1 filly. Unfortunate in the Oaks, ground win against her in the Ribblesdale. It's not difficult to explain away, some of her defeats.
She is a very good horse, a top-class horse, no doubt. And I think she could have won the Oaks, but I'm not sure whether 1.5 miles is her optimum trip. I think 10 furlongs probably is. I think we saw that here at York in the Musadora. We definitely saw it in a steadily run Nassau, in which she showed a devastating turn of foot. It might be that her class gets her through it. That might well be.
I think the York 1.5 miles is less of a worry than Epsom's 1.5 miles, personally.
There were raised eyebrows when Was won the Oaks. A lot of people were surprised, a lot of people didn't believe it. Has what she's done subsequently suggest that maybe there was an element of a fluke about it?
I don't actually think so, no. I think she was well positioned, had the optimum ride from Shamie Heffernan. He had her well positioned towards the 4, and he took his chance when it was available against the inside rail. It might have been, had other things worked out for the Fugue, that she might have beaten her on the day, but it would have been close. Since then, I think, was unfortunate in the Irish Oaks. She was hampered quite badly in the latter stages. She would have finished much closer, and she would have been totally undone by the crawl that they went in the Nassau Stakes over 10 furlongs, back up to 1.5 miles. I think she could be underestimated at your peril.
Sir Henry Cecil's Wild Coco returned on her seasonal debut at Goodwood last time out and put in a sterling performance, career best.
Definitely a career best. She's done really well from 3 to 4. She's a big filly, and I thought it was an excellent renewal of Lydia Langtree this year, one of the more competitive renewals, and she won emphatically in the end. My worry is that was 1 mile 6 and she was going away at the finish. I'm worried about the 1.5 miles. I've no worry she's very useful. The other thing is, I think the ground's important. She can't have fast ground because of her history. She wants some sort of ease in the ground.
Charetta has run some excellent races against the boys. Back against her own gender, I think she'll win the Darley Yorkshire Oaks.
I'm going to take a bit of a flyer. I'm going to go for Coquette, who I think was very unlucky in the Oaks. I know that Eddie Fremantle, who was an armchair jockey for Goodwood Week, thought the same thing as well. And I think she's going to be a big price, probably too big.
It's a Fugue for me. She got a Group 1 last time out at Goodwood. There's a slight issue about whether she's every bit as good at 1.5 miles, but I don't think York's the stiffest 1.5 miles, and I think her class will see her through.
Master trainer David Barron is not given to overstatement, so when he pegged Nunthorpe hopeful Pearl Secret as the best he's trained, even as a 2-year-old, the racing world took notice.
From day one when we started to work him, he just had an awful lot of ability. I've said he is a very, very quick horse, and he had ability from day one. We have been careful with him because he's a little bit of a nervous sort of a horse, and it was just a case of trying to get him to do things right rather than just go steaming off and go as fast as you can for as far as you can. So we have sort of kept the lid on him and tried to teach him. I know after last year we kept him in training all winter simply to keep in touch with him, just to keep him and try and get him where we wanted him.
As a 3-year-old, you started off in a handicap.
Yeah, it was fairly well in.
And since then, tell us why you've taken the path you have with each race that you've chosen.
Simply because of his temperament. I just wanted to keep a lid on him if I could, and it's suited. We've stuck to his own age group, and I think we've educated him as well as we could have.
You went to Sandown and you got the worst possible draw, but you must have been well pleased with what you saw there. Why?
I thought he did very well. I think the ground was, I know he goes on soft ground, there's no question he goes on soft ground, but that day at Sandown the ground was a bit more than soft. It was quite bad. The worst of the draw, never had any cover. I thought it was quite a good performance by him to go and win. You could have forgiven him for being beaten.
And early on in his career, given how keen he was, he wouldn't have managed with that.
He wouldn't have done it. Without any cover, he would have just gone far too strong.
Why did you choose not to go to Royal Ascot? That was a particular decision of yours.
I wanted a bit more experience into him without over-facing him at this stage, and so that the Sandown race worked out well. Ascot was never a serious option.
Say if it was fast ground for the Nunthorpe, would that be a concern?
Well, it has to be. You're never certain. I mean, he's had 4 runs in his life. He won on good ground at York as a 2-year-old. He's run on easy ground all year, apart from it was more than easy at Sandown. Until you actually see him do it, yeah, it has to be a concern, of course, but there's only one way we're going to find out.
In terms of your job, though, we've had a look at him. He looks incredible. He's surely in the form of his life.
I'd be very happy with him. He's a very striking horse to look at to start with, and he is at present. He looks tremendously well, and he seems in very good form. And
do you hope to keep him in training next year?
I'd love to. I mean, I think he's had a very sheltered career up to now. You'd love to go and think we had a horse to take on whatever we wanted next year. And
there's more. You believe there would be more to come if you were kept in training for another year?
I think more than anything, he's learnt his job. He's far more professional than he was when we started.
We do have an exceptionally consistent horse in Bated Breath. There is Hortensia, who showed what she could do at Goodwood. It's a very good year, this.
Yeah. I think potentially he's very good.
We're down at the 5 furlong start where we're about to preview the Coleman Nunthorpe Stakes. The emphasis is on speed, starting here and racing down the straight where the runners finish in front of the grandstand. Now the horse who's arguably got the most untapped potential is the unbeaten Pearl Secret.
He is tremendously exciting. He's so gorgeous to look at. He's a really good looking horse, and when I saw him, he got a real sheen on him. He was ready to go. He's a very exciting horse. He is unproven in this grade, obviously, but David Barron is a trainer I hugely respect, and he's saying that he clearly thinks he's the best horse by some margin that he's ever trained. He's had a horse, Coastal Bluff, who dead heated in the Nunthorpe before, and he thinks he's up to this grade, always has done. The astonishing thing, a very un-David Barron thing to say, was right at the very start, when this horse was a 2-year-old, I think this horse is the best horse I've ever trained. That's an extraordinary statement for a man who is as circumspect and measured as David Barron is. So I suspect, I'm sure he's up to this grade. The unknown is the ground. He is quite a heavy topped horse. He's got a lot of bulk to him, and if it were to be very fast, that's a total unknown.
It was great to see Hortensia show something like her best form at Goodwood last time out. I was getting worried that the Australia going to Dubai and then coming here was probably getting the better of her, Steve, but she showed that she's now back to something.
I think so, and she was carrying a Group 1 penalty, and make no mistake, she won really easily in Group 2 company at Goodwood. It was a fine performance, I think, and I think it was back to somewhere near her best, and she showed that hallmark turn of foot that she showed in Maidan that we were all excited about, and which was missing for Ascot for I don't know why, and almost certainly because of soft ground at Newmarket. I think we've learned enough about her, and to be fair to Collection, they've always said the same thing. I think a sound surface is important to her. If she gets it, she showed at Goodwood she's got tons of speed, and you can imagine York really suiting her.
My concern for her here at York is one of the reasons ascribed to her below par run in the King's Stand was that she boiled over beforehand. Now we know that York is notorious. The stables are all the way over there. I don't know whether we can pick them out. And they have to walk the horses have to walk before they start the race. They have to walk across the Knaves Mile. Now on race day, that will be absolutely packed with people like nowhere else. It's a long way to go to get het up. Now you can take the option to box them over, to take a horse box and drive round. I hope they do that with her, because I think that will help her.
Well, Connections of Bated Breath are having another go at Group 1 level with this remarkable sprinter who's run so well on a number of occasions but hasn't done it at the highest level just yet. We can hear from Khaled Abdullah's racing manager now, Teddy Grimthorpe.
His form is very, very solid, strong, and he's been tremendously consistent at the very top level. But he needs just to go to that one extra level if he can. The faster the ground, I think, the better it is for him. It suits that. He bounces off that and can really kick a dasket. He was just a little bit on the easy side, and with that he just couldn't quite kick as well as I think he'd be capable of.
I think that York and Haydock both suit him absolutely ideally, because
Why?
I think he wants a flat track, and they're both flat. Well, you can see for yourself. It's a flat track all the way to the line. 5 or 6 furlongs, I think, is equally effective. It might even be that he's better over 5 furlongs. He's got the track record at Haydock Park.
Yeah.
So if it's fast ground and 5 furlongs, he has his very, very best chance to get a Group 1 race. I think he's up to it. On his best performance, he should be a Group 1 winner.
2 years ago, Soul Power won the Nunthorpe Stakes at 100 to 1. Now, he clearly won't be 100 to 1, and he's proven himself. At the time, a lot of people thought, obviously, it was a fluke, but he's clearly proven that it wasn't a fluke.
He was drawn high in the King's Stand Stakes, the race in which Bated Breath was second to Little Bridge, and he was the only horse that was drawn high that got involved at the finish. So I think he was a little bit disadvantaged. In my gut, I think he's slightly, very slightly less good than Bated Breath, but there's not much in it.
Well, Mason has had a stellar season, and last time out was clearly the best that we've seen of him. And we can actually hear from Mason's trainer, Richard Fahey.
Well, many congratulations on the victory in the July Cup. Were you expecting that?
You never expect to win a Group 1 like he did, but I was, he had an excuse at York. He didn't come back, got a leg stuck on the stalls there. I mean, put it like this, if he hadn't run his last 2 races, he had a big chance. He was probably second favourite. I think he was second favourite for the July Cup after he won the Palace House, so he came back to his best.
You mentioned the problem he had in the stalls at York. Was that just a one-off?
I hope so, because we've never had issues with him at all, and he got his back leg stuck on the stall there. He was messing about, and he got very wound up at York. York can be a little bit funny there, and we'll see what happens,
Basically, you've learned from the experience, and there are things that you can put in place to sort it out.
There is. It was a little bit of a surprise how upset he got at York, and we would box him across, and I'm sure that wouldn't be a problem.
Does he need a bit of cut in the ground?
It's very difficult because his best form is nearly on that, but he has won on quick ground. Would I run him on fast ground? Yes, I would.
The higher grade you go, and you don't get any higher than Group 1 company, you need everything in your favour. And if you were to design a race for Mason, you would have the heavens opening. Not because he can't handle a decent service, he can. He's proved that in the past. But to be his absolute best, and he'll need to be his absolute best to win this, I think he wants soft ground.
In his favour, he's looking really well. Again, when I went to see him, he is at his physical prime. He's a horse in his physical prime. So, that's the positive for him, definitely.
And you would understand what physical prime is, standing in between Steve and I. I'm confident about the chances of Hortensia. I think she'll win the Nunthorpe Stakes. I think she's the best around over 5 furlongs.
I'm going to believe that Pearl Secret can make the jump from listed class to top Group 1 sprinter the first time of asking, mainly because I have that much respect for trainer David Barron. He is the bee's knees, and I suspect the horse might be as well.
I'm putting on my sun cream and my shorts, because I'm expecting hot weather, and I'm expecting Bated Breath to get his first Group 1.
The feature race for stayers at York's Ebor meeting is the Weatherbees Insurance Lonsdale Cup, and the horse who has now moved himself very close to the pinnacle is Sadler's Rock. Is he the horse who's the top stayer around?
In the absence of Colour Vision, who had to concede weight to him and didn't handle the track, I think, at Goodwood last time, I think Sadler's Rock is setting the standard here. They've worked out how to ride him, haven't they? They're not going to get caught out like they did at the Ascot Gold Cup by a crawl where he pulled too hard in the early stages, and he's not able to use that momentum of staying power that he has. Now, York is going to suit him very well. There's a lovely long straight. I think he wins.
I think they were at pains just to get things right or not to get things wrong at Goodwood rather than to get things right. I don't think ideally he would be ridden as prominently he was, and I don't think he'd take it up as early as he was. He was definitely idling at the finish, but they just didn't want a repeat of the the sort of the steady pace that they had at Ascot, because basically he's a stayer. I think in an orthodox race, I think he would put more daylight between himself and the horses who he beat at Goodwood.
Well, about 3 years ago, Cavalryman looked a horse of lots of potential. Over a mile and a half, he ran very well in the Arc behind See the Stars. And recently, Steve caught up with Godolphin racing manager Simon Crisford.
And he's a course and distance winner. He seems to have found a new lease of life, but we can't be sure about that because he's beating slower horses over 2 miles. And I think perhaps we've been guilty in the past of running him in the championship races over a mile and a half without ever giving him a chance to just get his confidence back. But he's an interesting horse. I still think the jury's out a little bit. I think he looks good winning condition races and listed races, but I think the Lonsdale will be a tough race, and whether he's quite good enough over that trip to win, I don't know.
The collateral form of his win last time ties up quite closely with the Goodwood Cup, which obviously you were involved with Colour Vision. He ran a great race under a penalty. Would that be an accurate reflection of how you imagine the variability between your two horses?
Well, I think we would all think that Colour Vision is much better, not just better, much better than Cavalryman over 2 miles.
Well, the problem with trusting Cavalryman is the fact that he's been disappointing for such a long time, but the win last time, Lydia, suggests that, well, maybe he is just an improved horse.
Yeah, I think you want to see him do it again. I take that point very much so, because he has been out in the wilderness for such a while, but the form of the last win was a good one, and you can definitely argue that he's unexposed and open to improvement over 2 miles. Will he want a fast surface? I wonder whether he might be best with a little bit of cut in the ground, but you have to say that he's a proper danger here.
Well, 3 years ago, Ascot won the Lonsdale Cup, and he still possesses a lot of ability, as he showed last time out at Goodwood.
Definitely, I think he showed it more than just then as well. Second in the Goodwood Cup, a really good run when fifth in the Ascot Gold Cup, when he wasn't very well positioned at all.
There was a moment in the Goodwood Cup where I thought if he gets a clear run, he's going to rough up Sadler's Rock.
Yeah, I think that was the real sign to me that Sadler's Rock was idling, because I thought he picked up again in the final 50, 100 yards and was holding him again. But it's still a really good run by Ascot. I think the ground's important. Certainly the trainer thinks the ground's important. He thinks that his action has always given him the impression that he wants a soundish surface. And it is backed up by the bulk of his best form comes on a reasonable surface. He handles good ground, but he wouldn't want it too soft.
A horse who remains open to improvement in staying races is Ibichenko. He's trained in Newmarket by Luca Cumani.
He's definitely a stayer. As I said, he's a nice big scopy horse. And in his run so far, his 2 runs he's had for us, he's shown that he really likes a trip. He likes to go 2 miles. Soft ground is not ideal for him. Good ground is better, and he seems to be in good form.
He was placed in Group 1 company, wasn't he, in Germany as
That's right.
last season, and
That's
that was
right.
around a mile and a half. But you found fairly quickly that he wanted a trip, did you?
Yeah, he does. He definitely does. He hasn't got a great turn of foot. And he's a bit of a galloper. He likes to gallop. As you saw at Sandown in that race where he finished second to opinion poll, he looked almost like he was beaten and be swallowed by the pack, but yet he stayed on and on and on all the way up the straight.
Would you say he's improved since end of May, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know, I get a better feeling about him. Going both into Newbury and Sandown, I just felt that he was sort of working a bit sluggishly. He wasn't particularly enjoying his work. We had to push him quite hard to get something out of him. Now he seems to be much more willing to give and to do it more of his own accord, and there's certainly a little more spring in his step, even though we are in a wet summer.
I'm slightly concerned about the nature of the race. Unless we get a really strong gallop, York is not as stiff for 2 miles as Sandown is, and stamina might be a strength. There's a danger of get outpaced unless they go a real gallop, I think.
I think Sadler's Rock will win the Lonsdale Cup. Quite simply, he's the best stayer around for me.
I doubted him in the Goodwood Cup. How foolish, Sadler's Rock.
Definitely Sadler's Rock for me. Hopefully returns to perform the Doncaster Cup last year. That makes him the best stayer around.
Well, that's it for this episode of Armchair Jockeys. Next time we head a few miles south to Doncaster to preview Camelot's bid for racing history. He goes for the Triple Crown in the Ladbrokes St Leger. But from these 2 jokers, Lydia, Steve and myself, bye-bye.